Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here at Deploy. I'm Faye Hutsell, Vice President of Product Marketing here at DigitalOcean. And I have the pleasure of welcoming IDC Research Vice President of Worldwide Infrastructure, Dave McCarthy. Dave, great to see you again. Thanks for joining us at Deploy.
Yeah, Faye, it's great to be here and great to be talking to such a wide audience.
Wonderful. You know, Dave, we're witnessing some remarkable changes in the cloud industry right now, particularly given the velocity of AI ML. Can you share how this may be shaping cloud buyer behavior? In particular, what are the current cloud investment trends and preferences that you're seeing among developers and small businesses? What does that preference imply?
Yeah, certainly. Well, as an industry analyst, my job is to track industry and technology trends. And what we're seeing in AI and ML is quite honestly unlike anything I've personally seen in recent years. The fact that the impact has risen beyond technology circles to boardrooms of virtually every business has made the biggest difference. And when IDC asks companies who will play the most strategic role in their adoption of AI, the overwhelming answer is cloud providers. That's because cloud providers are heavily investing in both the infrastructure and platforms that are needed to develop AI applications. That's also why, despite all of the challenging economic conditions, that spending on cloud continues to be resilient. IDC is forecasting 21.4% year over year growth in IaaS and 28.9% in PaaS, which is inclusive of AI and ML services. And when we look at the timing and the sequence of this, the initial area of investment will absolutely be AI ready infrastructure. These are typically compute instances with hardware accelerators like GPUs. And of course, those GPUs need fast compute and storage services. So you'll see a lot of innovation happening in that space as well. And then once you get past the infrastructure, there's also a lot of interest in both ML frameworks, the software stack that sits on top of the AI infrastructure, as well as access to large language models, including open source. You need all of these elements working together to really deliver on the promise of AI.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. And you're familiar with our product suite, specifically on AI. How do you see DigitalOcean's Paperspace solution making a difference for AI application development? Whether it's scaling apps on low-cost GPUs or fine-tuning foundation models, or some of our customers are ambitious enough to sort of build the next chat GPT. We have a platform that frankly brings you that capability. When and why do you think founders and developers should consider us?
Well, I personally felt like the addition of Paperspace to the DigitalOcean portfolio of cloud services was a great move for all of the reasons that customers love DigitalOcean. Your focus on developers, startups, and SMBs has created a different experience than you find with other providers. And if you think about AI, it's still very new for a lot of companies, and especially for companies that are looking to do a lot of innovation in the space. The very first step, especially with all the area that we're seeing in generative AI, is really that creation of those large language models. And one of the challenges I see in many cases is that the creation of those can be expensive and sometimes prohibitive for smaller companies. And so what I've been seeing and what I've noticed, of course, all along with DigitalOcean is the fact that you make this type of technology more accessible to smaller companies and companies that are really growing and innovating in that space is actually going to be a key to helping them accelerate what they're doing. And so I certainly expect this combination of Paperspace and DigitalOcean will help on that ease of getting started with AI, but then also the scalability of it once it becomes successful.
Absolutely. And we have a lot of customers like Supermaven, Nomic, the list is long, that are proof points of that success model that you were just alluding to. I'm curious though, on the cloud provider side, what are some additional factors today, Dave, that influence provider decisions on platform changes and innovations in support of developers running fast and startups wanting to innovate as speedily as possible?
Yeah, I spent some time in the startup world, and I can tell you that developers and startups are always working with a limited set of resources, and they're of course challenged on how to deliver quickly on an ever-growing set of requirements. And this is really why cloud is attractive. I mean, some of this goes back to the original value proposition of cloud, that ability to provision resources on demand and pay only for what you use. But as cloud providers have expanded beyond infrastructure into platform services, there's been an emphasis on creating developer tools and integrations that make it easier to deploy and build these applications. The one way to look at it is to think about it in that context of like an overall software development lifestyle cycle. You have steps like planning and design, development, testing, deployment, right? All of this kind of moves along the process. And cloud providers are stepping into those areas and helping with things like support for IDEs, the availability of different application frameworks, support of like CI/CD pipelines, and then API management as well.
And that's arguably where a lot of our focus has been too. How do you see the role of user experience and frictionless development processes impacting cloud service adoption within the developer community long term?
Yeah, it's an interesting area because I feel like just like any company, there's so much focus on making things work that it's like the user experience oftentimes comes second, which isn't great because if you really think of some of the biggest challenges that I've heard about developing in the cloud, it's just navigating the complexities that are inherent in so many of these platforms. It can quickly become overwhelming, and when that happens, everything slows down, which is quite honestly the exact opposite of what you would expect cloud to be. And so there's definitely an appetite in the market for an easier, more streamlined approach to developing in the cloud. Sometimes I'll say, there was a time when clouds were judged by the number of, new services and features that were announced each year. But now customers are realizing that more is not always better. That why you see people gravitating to clouds, they give them exactly what they need in a more straightforward manner.
And if we were to sort of hyper focus on the challenges of getting started on the cloud, particularly for individual developers, what are some of the primary challenges they face along with startups and growing digital businesses when they're considering different cloud providers?
Well, a significant part of it is understanding the costs, especially when you're creating something new. All the cost calculators in the world aren't helpful if you don't have historical information to profile your app against. And then you combine that with the complex pricing models of many providers, and that certainly isn't helping things. So effectively, really what customers want is just a pretty honest, right? A simple, transparent, predictable pricing, especially if you're an ISV or like a SaaS company. Otherwise, like how would you create a profitable business?
Yeah, fair points, and I agree with all of them. And this is why we approach the platform experience here from that angle, right? To become a lot more relevant for developers. In your opinion, what are sort of when you look at the market broadly and the options that developers have out there, and then compare us? What are the key features that make DigitalOcean a standout, a strong alternative relative to, let's say, the hyperscaler experience?
Well, from my perspective, DigitalOcean has taken a different approach than the hyperscalers to address a lot of the issues that we've been discussing so far. And again, it's really back to that idea of a cloud that was designed specifically for developers, startups, and SMBs. So I've talked to many DigitalOcean customers, and what they tell me is they really appreciate the community support that they get, the easy access to support resources and technical documentation, the fact that the services themselves from a technology perspective are easier to get started with and easier to get them quicker to their goals. So, you put all these things together and it's really just about fit. What they tell me is that DigitalOcean just fits them better than some of the larger players in the market.
Absolutely. And it's great to actually get that real-time customer feedback. Cost, performance, these are all significant considerations in the cloud journey for growing businesses. Where do you think, Dave, we are consistently delivering for our customers? And fundamentally, where can we do better?
Well, from what I've seen, DigitalOcean is tackling that whole transparent and predictable pricing issue head on. I like that many things are actually already included in your services. Like, for example, even basic compute instances have storage already built in. And then, again, back to the sort of simplicity and the right sizing of what people are looking for and matching that. Again, I think this gets back to the maybe like an old adage of it's easy to make things hard. It's hard to make things simple. And so these are the areas that I've been seeing DigitalOcean really separate itself. And I guess if you had asked me a year ago, what are some of the things you can improve, I would say, well, you need to really start ramping up your AI services because it was becoming such a big trend. And then, of course, you did the deal with Paperspace, and now you've augmented the existing portfolio with all of these new AI specific capabilities, both on the compute and the platform side. And so right now, I feel like you guys are firing on all cylinders.
Absolutely. And then I want to kind of pivot to scalability and flexibility needs for customers, and particularly businesses looking to meet their growth objectives. How does DigitalOcean, do you think, help deliver against these requirements?
Well, certainly the ability to scale quickly is absolutely critical for a growing business, especially startups. I mean, the last thing that you would want to have happen is to get some positive attention that sparks a rapid increase in demand only to have your app crash. And, to be honest, you only get one chance to make a first impression. It's also becoming incredibly important to have global reach. Today, both employees and customers are spread out everywhere. And to ensure a good user experience, it's critical to deploy into those regions where they are. And that's why when I look at your overall portfolio and availability across like North America, Europe, and Asia, you are definitely making that possible for customers.
Absolutely. And if we were to look at sort of additional considerations aligned to security measures and data protections, how important is this for how much of a key criteria is it for developers and for startups that are evaluating cloud providers?
Well, just like I described that a failure to meet increased demand can be a killer to a growing business, there's only one thing worse, a security breach. And the reality is that most small and medium businesses, they just don't have dedicated security personnel. And so those types of companies really must rely on the strength of their technology providers to help protect their most important assets, which is both the company and their customer data.
Absolutely. And I think that is where our growing focus has been and continues to be. When we look at sort of the trends in the market today, multi-cloud continues to be sort of robustly the theme of the industry. Why do you think it would be worthwhile for a business or, particularly a high growth startup to consider DigitalOcean as a part of their growing footprint, as a part of their multi-cloud portfolio?
In general, there are more choices than ever when it comes to choosing a cloud provider, and customers are realizing that each has its own personalities with different strengths and weaknesses. We've shared some conversations in the past that when I would talk to customers and asked about multi-cloud a few years ago, the answer is and I asked why, the answer would be, well, we did it by accident, right? There's lots of reasons why people found themselves in multi-cloud environments. But you ask them that question today, why are you doing multi-cloud? And it's much more intentional. They're doing it for that very reason of realizing that I guess you can go back to the old saying, choose the right tool for the job. And so, in my opinion, DigitalOcean isn't trying to be all things to all people. It has focused on a set of services that are designed specifically for those types of customers that we talked about earlier, customers that from a value perspective really look to things like ease of use and simplicity, of course, without sacrificing things like performance and scalability.
Absolutely. And that consistency is critical. And lastly, Dave, what advice would you give to developers, startups, and also ISVs that are considering a cloud migration today? How can they best optimize their cloud journeys?
Yeah, I guess I would go back to what we mentioned earlier, what I mentioned earlier around the fact that bigger isn't always better. And that when you evaluate a cloud provider, it's really important to look for one that fits both your needs today, but also that ability to grow with you. And as we enter this new world of AI and ML applications, I'm really feeling more themes around the industry that what worked for people in cloud over the last 10 years is now going to be very different over the next 10 years. And that's what's really driving people to reevaluate and think about, how they want to purchase and deploy the infrastructure in the cloud, but then also importantly, the applications and the AI and ML services that sit on top of that. And if you go back to, I guess, the very beginning of today's conversation, when I was talking about like the strategic role of how cloud is being viewed for businesses of all types in many ways, it's really increasing in importance. And so I guess my recommendation here is to really evaluate your options, understand what's best to you, and recognize that cloud providers are going to play an increasingly strategic role in your overall business.
Absolutely. No, those are some great critical considerations that you're offering our audience today. Dave, thank you so much for your time. It's been super insightful, and I hope that our audience benefits from this discussion too. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you joining the session.